tell you what.
All right, Chuck. So I wanted to get an update for our listeners as well. How's that knee doing?
Not good. It's I'm just getting better, but it's still it's all right. It's okay.
For those, I don't know if I can share. Maybe no.
Let's keep that one.
Okay, we'll keep that one on the low. But yeah, everyone, welcome to episode 4 of the Chondro Lounge, and boy, do we have a great episode for you guys. I don't know if you can remember the last time Dan Mulleary was on a podcast, Chuck, but I'm excited that we got Dan coming on.
Yeah, me too. I feel like Dan on his podcast that he did with Mark O'Shea.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of starstruck myself. I love Dan. I've been talking to him for years. I've been trying to get a green tree from him for years because his imports are just, in my opinion, the best to come in. You know, he's able to handpick them. He knows what he's doing. He's produced them. Not only is he a keeper, but he's a breeder. And I don't know anyone that I know of in modern history that's done as much traveling over there, especially dedicating their entire life, leaving the States, retiring, and just living the life. Him and his wife, Apple, make some of the coolest videos. That's the other thing. I mean, not only is he a keeper, a breeder, an expeditionist, but dude, he lives it. And him and his wife make great videos. Like, they are engaging. My kids watch it with me. Mm-hmm. And he goes, I mean, he's sleeping in bamboo huts, and they're packing hammocks because they have nothing but a mat to sleep on, and seeing how the folks over there live kind of gives you some perspective about, you know, what to be thankful for here, and the things that we really do take for granted, and how much appreciation like kids have when him and his wife go over to visit a family that they've made friends with on this remote island in the middle of nowhere, and they're bringing the children of the village coloring books. Yeah. And the kids are just so happy. You know what I mean? So not only is he just everything that everything that I want in a friend and a person to talk to about green tree pythons, but just genuinely just a really good person, and just cut from a different cloth when it comes to the whole as a chondro community. He has, you know, taken his own direction, and he's been extremely successful with it, I believe, for around 27 years.
Something like that.
Yeah. It's incredible. He's built what he has from absolutely, you know, the ground up, and just a lot of respect to it. He's earned everything he has. Nothing's been given to him.
Yeah, one thing that you know, just to give my background. So when I got into the whole retic scene and the locality stuff, a lot of the information that I was getting was being traced back to the locality information to DM Exotics. You know, I reached out to him a few years back once to confirm some information on Coyote and then later on Kalatoa, and I always just found someone that in the retic world, when you're talking about locality stuff and big name importers, you know, I've talked to some of the other bigger importers, and those other people are not personable, didn't really give me the time of day, said that they would get back on paperwork and never got back to me. And I always found that Dan was open for an email, for a phone call. And I was thinking, man, this guy, you know, as far as importation, seems like he's a bigger than life character when it comes to reptiles, and was always so personable. And so I debated about sharing this here on the podcast because I don't want my little secret to go away. But Dan has an amazing Patreon that is super affordable. And I got connected with his community about a year ago, and I've probably learned more in that year than I have in my previous 5 years of keeping, just learning about what it takes to bring animals in. And so this episode is going to be about that. It's about the import process. It's about his history with importing chondros and other Indonesian species, and I don't know if you guys were keeping up with Dan, but there was a gap, probably, I don't know, 3-4 years, maybe 2 years. I don't know. I could be off. We'll find out. But where he stopped importing chondros, and I want to know what happened. And for those of you that aren't following his YouTube channel or Instagram, he's posted some videos recently holding some chondros, talking about potentially bringing some chondros in.
No, he's not.
And so, nope,
he's not bringing anything in.
We're shutting that one down.
Yep. And he's shutting the Patreon down too.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm just kidding.
I was talking to him earlier. Should I even mention it? Because I don't want people jumping on and skipping ahead of me.
Yeah, what the heck?
But what I will say is I'm excited if he's getting back into the chondro scene as I am getting into the chondro scene because, I got some import stuff that he's bringing in aside from chondros. I got my hands that I'm going to be getting in on. And this whole episode is about DM Exotics, importing, exporting, chondros in the wild, and we hope you guys enjoy. So, Chuck, you ready to bring them on?
Oh, yeah. I'm excited for this one.
Before we bring them on, we got flagged for a copyright issue with our intro music video that was originally free and was not copyrighted on the first episode that we did, but all of a sudden now it wants to copyright. And so even though the Reptile Lounge network makes $0 on YouTube, I mean, it does bring in a little bit of money, but not much. You might have heard a different intro for this episode, or just a forewarning, you might hear a different intro song for the next one, just in case you guys are like, am I listening to the right podcast? You are. Stay tuned. We'll bring Dan in here and let's get him on. Whether you've poured your heart and soul into your reptile business or you've just begun your business journey, AE Foundry has you covered with next level expertise in graphic design, motion graphics, videography, photography, and so much more. If you've been dying for a new logo for your reptile business, motion graphics for your current logo, a new website, or need assistance making your video podcast come to life, then listen carefully. AE Foundry's mission places storytelling at its core. AE Foundry believes that a distinctive story and background are the driving forces that set your brand apart. In today's market, consumers seek more than just products. They crave a connection built on trust with the brands they cherish. AE Foundry is committed to empowering small businesses and fostering authenticity that resonates with their consumers. Reach out to them and let them help you craft a visual narrative that helps establish a genuine and lasting connection with your audience. To contact AE Foundry, email them at aromero@aefoundry.com or on Instagram at AE Foundry. Dan, what's going on?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good, man.
Good. Man, they're going to shut us down? I feel prestige worldwide, wide.
Exactly. No, I got a copyright notification an episode ago, and it then backtracked and copyrighted all the rest of them, and we can still publish them, but we just can't monetize on the Chondro Lounge episodes, which is a bummer because the Chondro Lounge has actually been a pretty huge hit on the Reptile Lounge network. Our videos are getting quite a bit of views, and so I got to look for in the process of recording this, that's my homework for this week before this releases, is to try to find a new intro song.
Hey, I'll throw this out there. Don't feel bad. I got 3 of those on some videos that are like 8 years old. I got them last week, the copyright stuff. And
that's insane.
It was music that I paid to use, but I think what happens is these various tracks get sold to like the rights get sold to like a different agency and whatever. And then they give, it's not copyright strike. It's just a copyright notice or whatever. So
right.
You don't get deleted, but, and I'm not trying to push anything, but I'm using Epidemic Sound and I have the referral links in all of my videos, but since I switched to them, I've had 0 issues.
Okay, I'll have to bug you about that. I'll go check out the link there.
Yeah, it just depends on where you go. You start doing those Google searches and you end up on all these weird websites and it says, oh, it's free to this, free to use, no copyright and all this other stuff. You pay money even, and it comes.
And they flag you. Yep.
Yeah.
Man, well, Dan, thank you for being willing to come on. And just to speak on Chuck earlier, talking about how much you travel and stuff. We've been in communication over some animals over the last month, and you go from plane to land to boat to boat to plane to boat to land. And just the fact that you got into the country probably 5-6 days ago.
Yeah, a week ago.
Yeah, a week ago. Yeah,
a week ago today.
Yeah, so thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, no problem. I'm jet lagged, but I'll probably be awake for this one because that's where my brain is at.
Right.
I looked up airfare today to Soron, $10,000 a person.
It's not that high, but it is pretty expensive. It's far.
Jeez.
It's really far. I mean, maybe flying from here, it's going to get up there, but like the round trip from here to Southeast Asia is the same as like a round trip from, say, like Jakarta to Sorong.
Okay.
It can be very, very expensive. And some of the airlines you probably shouldn't fly because they're the ones that disappear. Like,
you're right. Chuck ends up on a Netflix documentary.
Yeah, right.
I was booking Costco Airlines.
Oh man. Dan, I think that we talked plenty about you in our intro, but I'm curious to really just dive in. I don't think that I want to know more about like the whole, when did importing start to become a reality for you, and kind of take us on that journey of where it's led you to like, now I know that now you have like a facility in Malaysia, and how does one even get to that point?
It's crazy. So I bred my first snakes, I think, when I was like 15, and it was sort of by accident. And I really saw the reptiles like differently once I did the breeding, because way back when people just had one of everything. It wasn't about breeding. Now everything is about breeding. You need a pair of this, a pair of that, and whatever. And I haven't gone not even one season without producing some snakes since I was 15 years old. So, I come from a breeding background. That's where all this evolved. I was producing lots of animals, and the reason that I became a business, DM Exotics, in 1997 was because in 96 and 97, I produced so many animals, I needed a way to move those animals. So I had to get the business license in order to be a vendor at a reptile show. So it wasn't me like trying to be a business. It was me just trying to sell my animals at a show, and getting the business license was the thing that I had to do in order to get me into a show to be able to sell. So anyway, of course, breeding animals every year since 97. And before that, of course, like I just said. And then I was struggling like everybody else on the internet, like trying to get these animals. These animals would go up for sale. It was like Ben Siegel, all these Florida people, right? They were the ones that were getting all the shipments, and like an ad would pop up on kingsnake.com or whatever. And if you weren't the first one like to send an email, you would not get that animal. And of course, there's other people that are local to those areas that would get those animals first. And sometimes I would get lucky and I would like grab a nice scrub python out of Florida, one of the importers, but I missed on a lot of animals, and it was getting really, really frustrating. And so I thought, you know what, there's gotta be a way that I can just get those animals myself. Like, why can't I import? So in like 2002, I started sending emails. I sent one to Bushmaster. I sent an email to Strictly. I sent an email to, I don't remember the other people that were around. And it was one of those emails that, like, in hindsight, I get those types of emails where it's like, hey, I want to get into importing, is there, like, would you be kind enough to pass your supplier and whatever, or tell me how to do it? And I, like, when I get those emails now, I answer those people. I'm not here to like hold everybody's hand and like teach everybody how to do it, but I at least answer. And none of those people even answered my email, not a peep. So I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to get any help from anybody. So in 2003, I just got on a plane and I went to Thailand, not really knowing what country would be the best country for me to import from. I started in Thailand, and from there, I mean,
what did you do? You grab the globe, you spin it, and you just like landed your finger somewhere. And
actually, my
Isn't there a movie? Isn't there a movie where they flag somebody for that?
right.
No, that's how they come up with localities sometimes on Morph Market. But yeah, so my supervisor at the time was an underwater photographer, and he had just got back from Thailand on like a liveaboard trip. And I'm a scuba diver. I was back then, and I still am now. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to Thailand. It was all about trying to figure out the importing thing, but I did a liveaboard also when I was there. So it was like two things going on.
Cool.
And so I went back multiple times as I would ask people in the animal markets, can you export? And it's like, yeah, sure. Everyone said yes. And so I was like, okay. And I know the fish are going in and out of there, and there's reptiles going in and out of there. So I just kept focusing and pushing there in Bangkok. And I actually did kind of break into it enough to get my feet wet and learn how to do it, like what I needed to do, the license, the broker, the whole thing. And so it was bittersweet. It was like a failed attempt. I got a couple shipments, lots of loss, lots of DOA, lots of animals that didn't get sent, and it was overall a loss, but in a way it was a win because I learned how to do it. And so at least I unlocked that. And I sort of gave up in Thailand, and then I found my way into Malaysia. Malaysia went really well. And then real quick, I helped my Malaysia partner at one of his expos. And while I was there, I was like the only white guy in the whole weekend at this expo. And I had a couple Indonesian people approach me and say, hey, would you be interested in participating in one of our expos in Jakarta? We have expos also, like Reptile only, and we have contests and all this. I said, oh man, sign me up. I'd be more than happy to go as like a guest judge, or like one of your like a foreign VIP, whatever. And so I did that, and then doing that unlocked access to an Indonesian exporter supplier. And so that's kind of how I got into the Southeast Asia stuff. And I found my way into I took a couple shipments from Mexico of tarantulas from a tarantula breeder down there. I took shipment from Chile. I found my way into Solomon Islands.
What did you? I'm curious. What you get from Chile? I was born in Chile. That's why I asked.
It was
tarantulas.
Yeah, it was pretty much all tarantulas.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Before they everything got like renamed and protected and all that, but there was all the rose hairs and all that stuff. But
yeah. Okay. Cool.
A box of giant spiders being sent to my house sounds like a nightmare to me.
I start feeling itchy just thinking about it. The hairs,
dude. I felt that.
Open the lid and the hairs go out, and if it's a summer day and you're already kind of sticky from sweat, and all the hairs, oh my gosh, it's brutal.
No, I felt that same. I took care of a buddy's dubia colony for a week while he was out of town, and I swear for 2 hours after I leave there, I still feel them on my forearm.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. So that's kind of like in a nutshell how I broke into the importing thing, but I never stopped breeding. So it's a funny thing that happens that once you start importing, you kind of just get labeled as an importer. Some people use that word like in a derogatory way, where they just dismiss you as an importer. He's just an importer. But it like your breeding, it's like overshadowed by the fact that you import. But I was actually breeding a lot of the stuff that I was importing, because I wasn't really importing for business. I was importing so I could get animals for my personal collection, because this whole endeavor, it has never been about trying to make money and like making a living and all that. It's always been about me getting the cool animals that I want, or getting brand new species or whatever, and bringing new animals to the hobby, bringing awareness to different things. And so it's never really been about me making money. But unfortunately, importing, it's commercial importing. So it's not just importing. You're not just buying, like 3 snakes from the ham show and having them shipped in a bigger box here to the US. That's not importing. That's just you buying some animals. Commercial importing is, 6 boxes, 7 boxes, or crates, or depending on what it is, and it's a lot. So you're forced to become, in a way, kind of a distributor, because you can't just take, like the 11 snakes that you want for, I would love to. That would be amazing for me. I'd still pay all the logistics and all the shipping if I could just send me one box with like 13 pythons that I want, and forget about all the rest of this stuff. I don't want to deal with it, but you have to deal with it. So like I had to do that in order to do the thing, that I wanted to do. So, so that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand is you can't just go most of the time. I can now, because now I'm like more established. So I can, I guess taking like 13 snakes is a horrible example because I would never do that, but I can go and take like 113 snakes and say, no, I don't want those frogs. I don't want those long-tailed grass lizards, and I don't need those tokay geckos. And now like those won't get forced on me. But in the first like many years, the first decade or whatever, it's like I was obligated to take all that extra stuff. But
right. And I feel like if you didn't, when you weren't established, you would, the rumors would go around that you're difficult to work with, and you basically would be blacklisted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but now I don't really have to. There's some interesting things happening, and maybe your guys' like line of questions would lead to this, but I guess I could just get ahead of it now. I predicted that this would happen. The pandemic was a great thing for all the businesses involving reptiles, right? Everybody had like record sales. There were importers in the US that would just send a message to like an Indonesian supplier and say, I need an order. And they would say, okay, what do you want? And they would say, I don't care what you send. People are buying everything. Just fill some boxes and send it. And they would just like and I'm not making that up. Like that's legit. And then they were just taking everything because everything was selling. And so as we all knew, like all the free money, all the stimulus, all the things going on during the pandemic, it's like, that's going to come to an end at some point.
The boredom, sitting at home doing nothing.
Yeah, no, but I mean, just like we knew that we were going to have to pay for all that at some point.
Oh yeah,
at some point, this is going to go away. At some point, everyone's going to have to go back to work, and at some point, the government and everybody, they're going to want to get that back, right? So, of course, we all kind of expected the economy to slow down, and it did. And what happened along with that is that these foreign suppliers now all of a sudden aren't getting these crazy orders like they were. And in fact, there's some importers that have gone bankrupt. There's like 3 importers that have scammed like a supplier that I know. They just ducked out or dipped out on invoices or just disappeared completely from the industry. And so it's like people are hurting, for various reasons, but it's mostly the economy. So when you have like a little reptile shop and the customers aren't buying any of their reptiles, they're not buying from any distributors, and the distributors aren't buying from any importers, and the importers therefore aren't really ordering anything from overseas. And so now a lot of the suppliers are a bit hurting for business. And I anticipated this, and I saved up money just in case. And it seems like everything is kind of like turned in my favor now, whereas before I wasn't strictly or underground buying, all of the bread and butter, all of the low end stuff that wasn't my market. And so like now those people, they're not really going at it that hard anymore. And so here I am. I have more value now because I'm a good buyer. I pay my invoices and all that. It's just that I don't have to explain now that I'm sorry, but I don't have a use for those 1,000 dumpy frogs or those 500 tokay geckos or whatever. And it's like, no problem. I need the money. Let's do a deal. Tell me what you need. And then so it's been really, really interesting. It's been amazing. And so the shipments and stuff that I'm getting now are smaller than they were before by comparison, but they're like very tailored to exactly what I need and what my customers are asking me for. And I don't need 500 customers for each one to buy a pair of dumpy frogs to like clear those animals out of my shipment. Maybe I only have 7 barnecks, scrub pythons or something. And I have many more than just 7 customers for those animals. So it's perfect for me. It's perfect for me. So I don't know if you guys were going to get into that part of it, but I predicted it, and this is exactly what's happening right now. It's been really good for me for animal acquisition, and the market for me is extremely strong as well, because if you're dealing with just those really difficult to get animals, the rare stuff and all that, people are lining up for that stuff. And I want to keep a lot of it too. So, and I don't have a lot of it, so it's working out really well.
Right. I mean, there's some stuff that I'm getting from you. Hopefully that paperwork can get fixed, but you're keeping the majority of the new group that came in and with the Patayas Carinata stuff. And I don't know, it's gotta feel nice to sit back and know that you can now start to make requests of what you're wanting, and you have people that are following through. And I'm curious, does any of that also have to do with the fact that I don't know if this is common, but you now have a facility over in Malaysia, and you're there for a good portion of the year. And it has that kind of opened up and established even closer connections and relationships. The fact that you're not just an email, voice, or text. You're in the field. You're on the grounds. You are talking to these people many, many months of the year.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And that's always been kind of a theory of mine, is to make all of my contacts face to face, because it makes a huge difference. I'm not just the dude in the email that asks for this, asks for that, and more of like a nuisance than anything else. I'm the guy that last week was sitting in your house having dinner with your family.
Yeah, that's huge.
Watch your daughter grow and all that kind of stuff. It's different. These people become my personal friends. Like extended family or whatever. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, but also a lot of the people that follow me and are familiar with me, I don't want to paint a picture where that's easy to do also, because it's very, very rare to establish a connection to somebody that you can trust over there, because I can't do all this stuff just myself as a foreigner. I need a really good, solid partner. And so, if anybody's going to try to emulate what I do, it's like, you need to pay your dues. You need to be lucky enough to where the universe kind of puts you in the path of somebody that's really good, like a really good, trustworthy person. And then those things could become possibilities later.
Right. I mean, it sounds like you need to go over there, travel for personal experience, and know when they're doing reptile shows. And hopefully, if the stars align, you meet someone and establish a good friendship. And then you got to go back and you got to see them again. Oh, and yeah. It takes a lot of stick-to-itiveness, it seems like, and consistency with communication. I don't think it's as easy as just planning foundation over in another country and saying, I'm going to run this joint. No,
you can't, you get together with 3 of your buddies and you show up on the doorstep of some place, and say, hey, all of us chipped in, we got $10,000 for a shipment or whatever. And they're just going to laugh at you and go, what? That's it. Some people do that. That actually, there's truth behind that story, but you need to pay your dues. You need to really kind of be aware of what you're doing and all that. And
I can
I still
imagine.
look back and just like, I can't believe where I'm at and what I've been able to accomplish, but it's just like the universe put people in my path that, it just somehow I came together with the right people. Not every time. I've also come into contact with some not so great people that, maybe I got scammed out of some money or a deal went bad or whatever, because that happens too. But the ones, of course, that I chose to like do something with, like those are some good people.
Yeah.
Some really, really good people.
It's actually kind of touching on one of my questions is, from when you first started going over, and, we're on a green tree python podcast, so I'm going to ask specifically for, the Indonesian stuff.
Sure.
The farms that you deal with over there, how has it evolved since you first went over there to Indo to, I guess, door knocking or going to that, that reptile show and getting hooked up with a farm the first time to what it's evolved into now? How has the encounters kind of changed? Obviously it's got to be much more comfortable, but kind of go into that. Like how do you just knock on the front of a gate of some of these facilities?
Well, we, after so many years, it's like we've been through some battles together, not against each other, but like, for example, if a shipment comes over here and U.S. Fish and Wildlife is, starting to have an issue with something, and it's like, it's not my fault. He sent it. I'm just the recipient, and then like we have to go through like all of these, like, hoops and trying to fix problems and do all these things. And those things happen a lot. And often, so, like we have long histories together, me with my various suppliers where, maybe 13, 14, 15 years. So there's like a lot of history. So we've like bled in battle before, like we have our little scars and our war wounds and things. And that, like, in my opinion, that like makes the bond, even tighter, even closer. But as far as like, things that have evolved as from like a facility standpoint and those sorts of things, a farm, yeah, I mean, I've seen upgrades and different things, but the thing that's been the coolest for me is being able to bring new species into the hobby that are now like really popular, like Pataeus carinata, southern white-lip pythons. Like those are all things that they weren't in the hobby before, where I'm on the farm and it's like, hey, check out these black white-lip pythons. They're tame. Huh? Yeah, they don't bite. Just reach in there, you pull them out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to bring some of these to the US. People are going to freak out. And it's like, I did that, through my partner, of course. And then as I'm requesting more and I'm kind of directing my suppliers where it's like, hey, I need more of these, or what about those? And I put them on to certain things, and then they kind of work for me, whereas if they got an email from, like some 21-year-old kid from whatever state with a nose ring and like a neck tattoo or whatever, and they send an email and say, hey, I'm looking for, whatever. And it's like, they're not going to get a response at all, but like I can send an email or a message or a phone call and say, hey, I'm looking for these boiga. They come from this specific island. What do you think? And they're like, yeah, give me a couple of days and I'll look into it. I might be able to come up with something like that for you. And so like, there's huge advantages, to be able to do those things because I've developed those personal relationships with those people. So I live for all this, like, and I don't want to cut you off from your question, but like Chuck was saying, going back and forth. At my job, they actually changed the policy because of me. I was working overtime as much as I could. And instead of taking it as pay, I would take it as bank time. I would just take it as time off, at time and a half. So if I worked 1 hour of overtime, I would get 1.5 hours of paid leave. And so like they used to have a max, I think it was 120 hours at any given time is the most you could keep.
You're the reason they capped my comp time at work. I can't save it all.
Well, I don't know about you, but the city that I work for, they did, and I did that for like a couple years, and I was going overseas 2 years in a row. I went 4 times a year
Oh man.
overseas, and it was all to like establish this business. It was crazy, and I actually burned myself out because the jet lag was permanent. I'd be jet lagged when I'd get over there, and then I would come back, and then I'd be jet lagged again. But just by the time I got over the jet lag, I'd be flying back again. And I'm not talking like 1 week trips. Like I would go for like 3 or 4 weeks at a time. And like finally the curtains came down on me, and they said, no, we're not doing that anymore. You're only allowed to do that 1 time per year or whatever. And so, yeah, but I wasn't having like, I wasn't going to Vegas. I wasn't going to Hawaii. I wasn't taking cruises. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. Every single trip was me going overseas, and it was all about reptiles. And I enjoyed it. Like that was super fun for me. But man, even I would travel by myself, and I don't even know if I would. Well, maybe I would. But when I think about how gutsy that was back then, like I'm pretty impressed with myself that I actually did all that, because I was going everywhere. I was poking my nose into Laos and Cambodia, Vietnam. Like I was really like looking for like all the suppliers that I could. And of course, I was learning a lot about laws and what countries are closed and quotas and all these things. And as I would get better and better, and like I'd push the boundaries even more so. And another thing that was super important, now that I think of it, was when I first started importing, I was supplying animals to other importers and other distributors that also imported. And so I had street cred, and I didn't think about it as street cred when I was doing it. I was just doing it because I needed to clear, like bread and butter stock and whatever. But a couple of times when I landed on the doorstep of some of these suppliers, they would be like, hey, so like do you sell to anybody? Do you do this? Do you do that? And like, I'd be on the plane flying back, and before I even hit LAX, already like maybe like California Zoological Supply, like I already got fact checked before I even hit LAX, where the supplier, would have sent shipments to them, and then they say, hey, do you know this DM Exotics guy? Do you know this Dan guy? Oh yeah, he does importing. We take animals from him, here and there as needed or whatever. Is he okay? Yeah, he's good. He's always been cool with us. Okay, good. And then like that was my ticket in also. So a lot of times you can't just show up and just be like nobody, because especially those suppliers, I don't want to say they're arrogant, but they're used to doing business with some pretty big time people. And whenever just some random person shows up on the doorstep, they want to know who that person is, because they want to know, how many shipments do I think this guy will take in a year? How much money are we talking about here? Because it's
Right.
it's a huge machine or whatever. So,
well, I mean, I'm sure it's a culture. I mean, it's a culture over there in Indonesia where it's not the finer things, and I'm sure it's built off of respect, and relationships, like you've mentioned. So yeah, I mean, if there's Joe Schmo and a new guy coming in, they're not going to waste their time.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you don't have any kind of resume, you don't have any, and that's hard to get. It's really, really hard to get. But like, just through all the different like circumstance, I was able to build that up also by accident and not even really thinking about it. So a lot of those things kind of paved the way for me as well. It was just like a long evolution of things that really worked, played into my favor. So
nice. So you're going over there, you're going to these facilities, and you're building a business. At what point did you make friends and say, hey, I want to go see a wild green tree python?
That's funny. Talking about green tree pythons, I think maybe before we started recording, one of you was talking about like the first time you saw one, you were like age 15, and like it became, something that you were like really interested in. My interest started, I think, when I was like in third grade, we we're talking about like in the late 70s, I guess, or maybe right around 1980. I remember very vividly in one of my classrooms, there was a magazine rack. It was like a little reading corner, and they had all the books and stuff in there. And we had like Ranger Rick or Zoo Books or something, and they were like these really nice magazines. And I remember one of those magazines had a yellow Neo green tree python in it, like really nice, like macro shots. And it was yellow with the red pattern, and the eyes were like all cryptic.
Eyes are
And
insane.
I was like looking at these pictures, and I was like just absolutely amazed by that animal. And I still remember that vividly to this day. And that is the time when the green tree python thing got like permanently ingrained into my head. Now, to answer your question about when did I finally decide, dude, I'm going to Papua to do this thing. So, of course, I would watch the little documentaries on TV, and PBS was a favorite of mine. Maybe on like Sunday, people were watching like, football and all that stuff. And I couldn't wait for PBS channel 28 for like nature or one of those documentaries to come on. So I used to be able to kind of like travel through watching these programs as a young kid. And so I started pushing the boundaries like at age like 30, early 30s. And now I'm going to Southeast Asia. And then my supplier in Indonesia kept telling me how dangerous it is to go to Papua, and don't go. It is very dangerous. Not Papua New Guinea. He was just saying Papua. And maybe at that time there's been many issues and like political things and all that stuff. So there have been many bad things that have happened there over the years, but he kept warning me like not to go. And then finally I just decided I'm going. Now I'm married. I took my wife with me, and we went there for the first time, and it was amazing. And so it was like everything that he told me wasn't factual. Yes, the travel getting over there is very difficult. Yes, you're very remote. If something happens to you, like a medical emergency or whatever, yeah, of course you're probably
kind of SOL
at risk for stuff. But at the same time, like going through Sarong, yeah, the people, like, you have to watch your belongings and pickpockets and getting robbed and all those sorts of things. But that's the city, that's the same as any city anywhere. But once we got out into the sticks, out into the jungle, out into the villages, people were like amazing. And so it's like, I don't know, man. He's been telling me all these things and building it up as like this really sketchy, scary place, but it's not. But it is very challenging. You don't see backpackers and all those people over there. It's just not that kind of a thing. But it's not a casual place that you just go. But yeah, went over there looking for all the reptiles that I dreamt that I would find there, and didn't. Like there were multiple trips that I went and just struck out.
It's like me herping over here in freaking Texas. I've yet to see a rattlesnake, dude.
The first green tree python I found was a roadkill one, actually.
Oh man.
And that was like crazy to me because,
what's it doing on the floor?
Yeah, you see rattlesnakes right on the road, DOR, and the first green tree that I saw was one on the road, and it wasn't necessarily sad to me. It was more mind blowing that there are green tree pythons to the left and to the right of this paved road, right in those trees somewhere, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And then and then little by little we started finding stuff, and so. And it was pretty amazing. Like every time you see something like that you've kept, like Apodora, I kept Apodora
still one of my dream
decades
species
ago, and then all of a sudden you see one or a white-lipped python or whatever, and you see these animals, and then you're like, man, is this really happening right now? Because, I've only seen it in my room in the cages and things, and now I'm seeing one like right here in nature, and it's a trip. it's really a trip. But yeah, it's cool. It's a cool thing.
Chuck, I know you had got a list of questions as far as like keeping these chondro, or not keeping them, but seeing them in the wild. Start digging those up. But Dan, I'm curious. Do you remember like where you saw your first chondro? Like where were you?
Yeah, on Waigeo.
Okay.
Yeah, in Raja Ampat on Waigeo, behind a resort called Yankawe Resort. I don't think the resort is there anymore. But
so I guess to our chondro listeners, what locality type would that be?
Yeah, Waigeo. It's a Waigeo locality.
If I'm not mistaken, that's a small island off the Vogelkop Peninsula, correct?
Yeah. Raja Ampat
look at you, Chuck.
4 islands. Raja Ampat is like it's a marine sanctuary. It's a protected area. And you have Salawati, Waigeo, Kofiau, and Batanta, I believe. Those make, I think those are the 4 that make the 4, if I'm not mistaken. I should know that. I just came back from there, but I know that Batanta was the missing one that we hadn't gone to yet, and so we just kind of knocked that one off the list. We didn't find any green trees there, but we just went there. So it's all kind of very similar to Sarong, locality type, but there's a lot of variation within all of those green tree pythons from that area, even like on the same trail. Like I remember in Waigeo, I think we found either 4 or 5 animals in one night on one like trail, and each one was very different. There was like high white, there was low white, there was high blue, and so there's a lot of variation even within a locality. They're not like all cookie cutter, same thing. So
when you say high white, are we talking about like high white? I'm assuming.
Yeah, like kind of like a high white Aru with lots of dorsal speckles.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Whereas like a Biak, if I say high white for a Biak, it's going to be probably like the whole body will be speckled or spotted.
Yeah.
So yeah, just like high white with dorsal speckling.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Question. So do you ask the locals specifically about green tree pythons? Because my question is, it's often the actual Bird's Head Peninsula, the Vogelkop Peninsula, but on the islands of Waigeo, Batanta, Kofiau, have you noticed? Is it truth that all of the neonates that have ever been observed on those islands are all yellow?
There are red sarong animals, and I would imagine that there probably are also red neos of the other localities, but I don't know. They're really hard to find. I haven't come across green trees like on every single place that I've gone and looked for them. So it's just not that kind of it's not that kind of herping. You don't, even though I've been, a bunch of times, it doesn't mean that I scored green trees every single time. So it's hard for me to answer that question. But I know that like if you feel that it's appropriate to use the farm information and the locality information for the animals that you see on the farm, then there are occasionally like red sarongs, or which could also be from the Raja Ampat area as well. So it's just not common. It's very, very uncommon.
Right. Have you been to the Arfak mountain region by any chance?
No, I have not.
But you have been to Manokwari, correct?
I have, yeah.
Which is, if I'm not mistaken, that's the ground level version that leads directly, it butts right up to the Arfak mountain region.
Yeah, I believe it does. I know that where we went, we basically took a road along the ocean, along the beach, and then hiked like straight up the side of a mountain, and like that's where we spent 2 or 3 days, like herping up high, like up in the mountain area. But it wasn't like climbing Everest or something like that. It's just that we did get to a little bit of elevation, and then we got into there. So I don't know. I guess you could call it a mountain, but it wasn't like a mountain. And we also didn't find any green trees up there. Yeah, we found some cool stuff, but we found some Candoya and Lophosaurus, the tree dragons, the really big ones. We found some cool things up there, but no green trees. We looked. That's like what I don't know what the secret is to finding them. I think it's just when the snakes are hungry, they come down, and that's when you see them. But I think my personal feeling is that like the population density is probably very, very high. It's just that you don't see them because they, like on this last trip we saw in Biak, we saw a huge adult. It would have been a world record size if we could have gotten it down. It was huge. It was probably 100+ feet up in the air on this tree branch, and like we could all clearly see it perched on this branch.
Could you imagine, dude?
It was like a mint green color.
It's like a green scrub.
Yeah, it was an older animal. It had that color for me with Biox. A lot of times you'll see that with like very, very old animals. Sometimes you'll get like a female will be like a minty green color, very light, almost bluish or mint color. And that was exactly what this animal was. But I'm telling you, if I could have gotten it down, it would have been like the diameter. It was huge. It was so big. We were all blown away. But I think that there's a lot of green trees high up in the trees. So when, we're terrestrial animals, right? So when we're herping, we're not climbing all those trees. We're just walking trails and looking low. And so when the animals are hungry, they come down to ambush their prey. And those are the ones that we see. But if they feed or they just don't feel like coming down or whatever, there's got to be a lot that we don't see. They're way up there.
And a message to our listeners: to fill that void, there are tons of green tree pythons on the available page in dmexotics.com.
Chuck, shut up.
I'm giving Dan a plug here.
Dan, I'm curious from your observation of just kind of identifying that they're very high up and then they come down. I'm almost wondering that, we talked a little bit about this on your Discord channel, but, as far as keeping them in captivity, we're talking about people keeping them in 3x2x2s, 2x2x2s, and then obviously there are some people that are keeping them, Stephen and Ashley with Focus Cube are keeping their animals in these spectacular, enclosures. But it almost makes me think if real estate north and south would be more valuable with more horizontal perches, to allow them to engage in that, vertical purchase, to allow them to engage in kind of that natural behavior. I mean, we can all see our chondros in our garages or living rooms or where we keep them. You turn the lights off and they're caught alluring. Like they don't need to move, right? The only time I see my animals moving, and they do laps around their enclosures up and down sideways is, at nighttime. But when I see them hunting, it's a different. They're frozen with that caught alluring, and so, what are your thoughts on that? Opinions? Like, and I'm not trying to push for this massive change, but I'm just curious. Like, would north to south make more sense as opposed to left? And because I know, as I've been watching the chondro community from afar without keeping it, I remember, 6-7 years ago, seeing on forums and on Facebook the arguments of needing further left and right space, that the 2x2x2s weren't enough, and they needed 3 foot in width to have more to move left and right. But what I'm hearing from you and what I've heard from just listening to other people that I've seen them in the wild, that up and down is pretty important.
Yeah, well, of course, there are branches that are horizontal in the jungle, but when you get lower to the forest floor, there's no horizontal branches anymore. Everything is vertical. And so I didn't really pay attention to it until this last trip, because all the ones, like I saw a green tree python coiled up on a rock, not in Biak, but this was in Waigeo, at night during our hike, and it was coiled up on a limestone rock. So it's like, oh, that's interesting. That animal's not even perched. Like it's just sitting on this rock, low, of course, in
so it's
the
like a ball python
range. Yeah. And then from this trip, it had me thinking back to the other ones that we found, and some of them were like, I remember on Kofiau, I found one, and it was on like a stick, like a like a like a branch from a tree, but from the outer end of a branch where it's just a light little stick. And then there was this adult green tree python like on it. And so this trip, I paid closer attention, and the ones that we found were all like on the base of trees, which are vertical, of course, and only like sitting maybe like a foot from the from the ground, and they have zero problems holding on, and they're just sitting there in ambush position, probably all night, sometimes without even getting a meal in. So, but of course, when they are relaxing, I'm sure they go, like that huge one was definitely on a horizontal branch, the one that was way up in the tree, and so I'm sure that's how they chill like during the day. But when they come down to ambush, they have really not that much choice than to go down a vertical branch, and then they just tighten up and hang that head down, and then they're just waiting for something to go by.
It makes sense to the reason why a lot of people say that the average size chondro in the wild is much smaller than in captivity. And, they're exerting a lot of energy going up and down. And not only that, but the energy it takes to wrap around a vertical branch, and the expenditure of calories and muscle that it takes to do that for a long period of time. I mean, it makes sense why they're at a caloric deficit and get that meal and go back up. I think it'd be a funny sight to see a chondro with a big meal and it just working its way 100 feet up in the air, on a tree. But it's just interesting. Something that luckily for me, I keep my snakes all in ambient. And I don't have chondros that I'm breeding super soon. I'll include probably a ceramic heat emitter to give it just a little bit of heat during the day if they become gravid, right? But so it allows me to be flexible with how I keep them, because I don't have to worry about, a north to south gradient if I have a hot spot or anything like that, because it's all ambient.
Yeah.
And so it'd be interesting to see, what maybe a 30-inch, width, but maybe just thinking in my head, 4 feet tall would look like, but actually having some trees or some vertical things going up and down, just things that I'm playing with in my mind.
Yeah. And then of course, like perch diameter is a huge thing that people will argue to their death on social media. And it's like, I don't know. I think they just go wherever I don't think it matters.
I agree with you, Dan. I think that they're wild animals and they deal with whatever they're given, and they're not given a meal on a silver platter, and they won't eat a medium frozen thawed rat that's handed to them. They'll eat anything that walks by that they could fit in their mouth. And
Yeah. But of course, like all that being said, keeping one of those in captivity is a whole different thing than the wild as well. And I do it too. Like even here, when I'm setting up, green tree pythons, I downsize the perch diameters for the little guys and I upsize it for the bigger guys. And I
Right.
still follow basically, the rule that everybody else is probably following as well. But, in the wild, I don't think they care. It makes zero difference.
Right. I mean, I think there's the stress factor as well of being put in a box as well, that we're trying to also just make things as I don't know, least stressful than it already probably is for them.
Yeah,
Before Chuck.
my question was actually leading. I got like maybe 2 or 3 questions, which is perfect for what we're talking about now. Is what have you observed or learned yourself? Because you do catalog information and you do take temperature, humidity measurements, all that stuff. What have you seen a wild green tree python doing that has given you like that aha moment, where you've learned something yourself and you believe it to be truth in your mind that is not readily available on the internet? Something that is just you're like, wow, why is this not being told? Why has no one figured this out yet?
I don't know if there is anything for green tree pythons. There's things that I've observed and learned, and for me they were breakthroughs, but not so much with green tree pythons. The only thing that I could come up with, and it's sort of touching on your question, is that the temperature in Papua is not as warm, I think, as what we tend to keep green trees at. It's just not. Like on this last trip, we were at our house in Thailand, and it was like 104, 105, 107, and it was hot. Like that's really hot for us. And then when we finally made it all the way to Papua, it was like heaven because it was only like 80, 82, 83.
That's cute.
And so, yeah. And so it was like super comfortable. And then so I was really kind of dialed into temperatures on this last trip because, it was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be 43 Celsius today. And then, and then we're over there and we're hiking through the jungle and we're like, man, this is not bad. Like it's only 27, it's only 28 Celsius, and so I was paying attention to that a little bit closer than normal. And of course, taking readings just because somebody wants to know that information. What's the humidity right there? We find a green tree python sitting on
100%.
like ambush, and we turn on the little device and we get the reading right there on the spot, exactly precisely what it is, And so I did that for that. But I think the takeaway that I got is that the temperatures are lower in those areas than I think what, the standard that everything is always like, okay, warm spot, 87 to 88, and it's like just this like cookie cutter, rambling or whatever. But I don't know, man. I think, let those animals get cold at night,
What is the coldest that you've observed a green tree python actively hunting?
Well, I haven't observed green tree pythons hunting like in the mountains of Wamena and all that, but I can guarantee you that the temperatures would be very surprisingly low, because those areas are actually kind of cold because they're up high at altitude. So, like the ones that I saw on this last trip, it was like 27 Celsius. I think that's like 80 or 81 degrees, and it probably that wasn't in the middle of the night. The ones that we saw were like 8:30, 9 p.m. So it still there's more, it's going to drop a little bit more, even getting it like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I'm sure is going to drop even another, couple degrees or whatever. So it just made me think because I'm doing both, I'm keeping them in captivity as well as also checking them out in the wild. So that was the only takeaway. I'll tell you an observation that it's just the wrong species, but it's perfect for your question. I observed viper boas on a couple of occasions sitting in water with their heads just right at the edge of the water in ambush position, sitting in the water. And I'm like, that's why all the viper boas that I get soak in the water bowls a lot, right? And so what I started to do is normally when snakes are in the water bowl, I'm hesitant to give them food because a lot of snakes will grab it and pull it into the water and then realize that, oh, this sucks. And then they'll let it go and spit it out because they don't want to swallow that prey in the water, right? So I started feeding the viper boas from the edge of the water bowls, and they're all taking food like that. So like that was a really nice little thing that I saw because it helped me for captivity. Big time.
You also observed a D'Albert's, a white lip, do the same in one of your videos as well, I believe.
Yeah, doing the same thing. But it was in the water, but it wasn't like submerged in the water the way the viper boa was. The viper boa was just like almost completely underwater except for the head, just like right there at the edge, like waiting for a frog or whatever. So, but yeah, I think some of these animals are more aquatic than what we think. Mm-hmm. And the temperatures in that water are even lower than
right.
So it's like, wow, that animal's like preferring to sit in a really cold spot, you know,
let alone eat a meal in a cold spot.
yeah, exactly.
You know,
I could-
it's one. No, I was gonna just speak to kind of like what
think-
I've been doing with my garage, with switching over to ambient. So everything that I have in my garage, actually, besides one Amazon tree boa that I just got just for shits and giggles, I haven't had a boa since I was a teenager, so I was like, why not? But everything in my garage, you know, my first year of garage, I was keeping only breed ticks at the time, and all the people keep it in ambient, and they were breeding in ambient and said, you know, 82, 83, keep it like that year round and your breed ticks will be happy. And so that first year, I maybe let it get down to 80 degrees. You know, the second year in my garage, you know, I was like, I think they could, you know, you know, I'm checking the nighttime lows and all the different island localities that I have. And, you know, some of them are, you know, 70 in the wet seasons are, you know, sometimes 73, 72, even on the little tiny islands for the lesser sundas, you know, 69, 68. So then I dropped it down to like 78. Now, you know, this year I'm going to make a big drop, and just during the cool times here, I'm going to run the heater less, and just, I'm going to let my garage dip down to, you know, 72, 73 at night, and then have that natural just increase during the day. And, yeah, I just, the longer I keep the heat for at least a lot of Indonesian species, I think is just really overhyped.
I bred boas back a long time ago, and we used to like cycle all of our animals down. All of us did. The BCC, like all of the true red tail breeders, and so there were always respiratory problems at some point when we were doing like the cycle. And so I learned a long time ago that as long as you give your animals heat during the day, they can get pretty darn cold at night, and it's not going to be an issue. But if you drop the temperatures consistently 24 hours a day for a period of time, then you're going to have issues. But like even if you do like what you're saying with a much colder nighttime drop, as long as they get heat during the day, like for a day cycle, I've never really seen any of those animals have any issues with that.
Yeah, the way that it works right now is, you know, the last year I let it get down to 77, but every day mimics the same thing. Is I allow my high, like my highs, I will manipulate with a heater if I need to, but my highs will always get 83, 84. And that's outside the enclosure. Inside the enclosure, it's typically about a degree higher. So in the enclosure for most of them, probably 85 degrees. But it's at nighttime where I'm letting that ambient just cool down to mid seven. And it's if you look at my sensor push system, it's a nice decrease. Well, this camera's not doing it. It's a nice decrease, and then you see a steady increase, and it just, you look at it and it's like that day in and day out.
Yeah. So to go backwards a little bit, and instead of maybe me asking if you've seen anything in the wild that was an aha moment, were you taught anything from any of your friends at the farms who are breeding these animals? Because you were a successful green tree python breeder. Were you taught anything from anybody over there? Were there any sort of techniques that you implicated once you got home in order to produce them domestically in the US?
No, not really. It's very different. I went through this moving my collection to Malaysia. We don't use heat. We use air conditioning to keep the heat down. And so that's a huge learning curve because,
Yeah.
you know, over here we use heat. We have to use heat, you know, because it gets cold. And so, and those guys are doing just outdoor, just ambient stuff. So that like, they're not doing really any kind of manipulation. And then some of those farms are in, you know, like if the farm is in like North Jakarta or whatever, or outside of Jakarta where there's like some mountains or whatever, like there's all these different kind of like weather trends, even just within Java where most of the farms are. So there's like little idiosyncrasies with the daily weather patterns and stuff, just between the little, like the different farms and their locations and stuff. So I didn't like whatever they're doing over there. It doesn't really apply to me over here, because over here it's like I have to manipulate temperatures using heat and all that kind of stuff. And so, and then, like I said, in Malaysia, we're using air conditioning, and it took me probably like 3 seasons to really figure out like why is this not working, and then finally, this year we figured it out, and I don't even think it was temperature related, is food cycling, which has always been a very important thing for me. It probably works better for colubrids, but food cycling works for everything. So less focus on the temperatures for me. But for me, it's the opposite, because we're setting nighttime drops with the air conditioner.
It's weird, right?
Yeah, it's
yeah,
super,
that's what I have to do here.
yeah, and then on top of that, the air conditioners dry out the air. So then humidity is an issue. So you have to be doing spraying and misting and all that. So it's a different thing. But yeah, it's just a different thing. I didn't get any tips or anything from anybody like that.
When you said you moved the collection, did you move your collection from the U.S. to Malaysia?
Yeah.
And does that include your green tree python collection?
No, I didn't send anything CITES over there. No boas, no pythons, just all the colubrids. So I had to liquidate almost all the python projects, because I just knew that it just wasn't going to work.
Do you have any green trees
I wish
left?
I knew you back then.
No. I didn't have a lot. I just had like a kind of a little core group there for a while.
You had a damn good group of imports.
Right, exactly.
They were some
Hand-selected
beautiful animals. They were very nice.
So,
Yeah.
Dan, let me ask you this. I want to get into your history with importing chondros, and kind of get into the bread and butter a little bit about what at least I foresaw this show being about. The thumbnail was Dan Mulleary's back. When did you when were chondros like on the radar? When did you start kind of bringing them in, and what was happening around that time? What were the localities that you were looking for? And then kind of take us into, if I'm not mistaken, you went 3-4 years, maybe 5 years without importing.
About 3 years. I saw the title of your thumbnail, and I didn't want to spoil it for you, because you were going that route. Basically, the only reason that I stopped was because the farm that I am doing business with now, and have been doing business with for a very long time, they were having some issues outside of the business, and so I had to push pause on getting shipments from that farm for a while.
But
now all the problems have been resolved and all that. So
why not another farm though? I mean, there's a demand.
I just I was pursuing business with a brand new exporter to make up the deficit, and I didn't want to try to push in on one of the longtime exporters, because now I don't like to compete. I like to just take it. I want to dominate it. I don't want to compete with anybody. I don't want to fight for anything. I don't want to beg for anything. I just want to put it together and let's do this thing, right? So Bushmaster gets, he still does, but that's a different story. Bushmaster imports from one supplier, and has for a long time. That guy supplies other people outside of the U.S., but for the U.S., there's an exclusive agreement. Another farm has an exclusive agreement with Michael Cole in Florida. And so a lot of the exporters have exclusive agreements with just one importer in this country, in the U.S. And so, and I know those guys. I've talked to them, and they're upfront about it. They're like, "Man, I'd love to supply you animals, but I have a deal with such and such, and I just can't do it. I'm sorry." And so, obviously, those I can't go to those guys. There's not a lot of exporters in Indonesia. There's probably only 8 or 9 functioning exporters that are actually functioning. And so I don't know. And then there's some of them aren't good. Some of them are like scammers. Some of them are super shady. And so like you start crossing all these names off the list, and it's like, I don't need to be having all these sleepless nights, like, where's my shipment? I just sent you the money.
No, you're having too much fun with Patai's Carnata. You could take a break on the chondros.
Yeah, yeah. So I actually I got set up with a new guy, where it was like, hey, let me introduce you. This is such and such. I think you guys would be able to work together really well. And if there's any problems, talk to me about it. I'll fix it. Let me know if he's screwing up or whatever. And I was like, okay, cool, man. Well, I'll try it. So I got in with a new guy, but the new guy doesn't have green tree pythons on his license. So that's why the green tree pythons kind of disappeared from what I was bringing in. But so anything with like a wild caught quota, I was able to get. So like scrub pythons still, D'Alberts still, like that sort of thing. All the colubrids and all that stuff that has wild caught quota, all of the colubrids do. Some of the monitor lizards do not, but I don't really deal so much in monitors, so I didn't really care so much about that. But so I was like, okay, cool. Well, let me grow with this guy. I'll be good for him. Hopefully he'll be good for me. I think I can teach him a lot. And I think we'll be okay, and then but again, like getting back to the whole thing with the economy and business not being like where it was before, then all of a sudden, like now I have people reaching out to me going, hey, do you need any animals? Do you want to take a shipment, this and that and whatever? So now it's kind of like I went from one consistent guy to nobody. And then I was able to kind of replace him with a new guy. And then now, like, everybody's coming to me because I have this street cred, because I have this reputation. So now, like, a lot of people are offering me animals and shipments. But of course, I can't consume all these animals, and I don't want to get into all these deals with all these people. It's just not, I need it to be very controlled, and I need to like keep my circles small and all that stuff. So I don't have like some super interesting answer to your question of why I got out of it. It was just very simple.
So the thumbnail should be the name of the farm is back, or or new supplier is in town.
Kind of. And it's also interesting. I'm not going to name any names, but there's a lot of people here in the U.S. like importers that are failing really bad with their suppliers. People that are they're not looking so good right now. And so, and that's great. I love it because, it's no different than you guys. If you have some animals and you sell, maybe you only have 3 or 4 like good customers or 5 really good customers. And, and here you are and you have this like badass clutch of whatever, and they're worth a lot of money. And all these people want your animals. Are you going to offer it to the dude that owes you thousands of dollars already as it is? No, of course not. You're not going to get paid. Why even contact that guy? So you're going to pick out of those 4 or 5 people, you're going to pick the guy that pays fast, that has money, that's no drama, and you're going to offer your animals to that guy. And so I'm that guy. Like that's what's happening right now is I'm that guy. And so I'm getting offered like some really, really, really good animals, but I'm just basically being rewarded for like having a good track record, not owing any money, paying as agreed, paying fast, all that kind of stuff. And so like that's what's happening. So,
I got a question, and I mean this probably is a pretty simple question for you to answer, and I might sound like an idiot, but why are green tree pythons a CITES animal? Aren't they of least concern conservation status? Because isn't CITES what, the Convention of the International Trade of Endangered Species or something of the sort, correct?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why are green tree pythons so basically that agreement would mean that green tree pythons are if I'm not mistaken, that means that green tree pythons somewhere in the world are endangered. Is it North? Is it Australia?
Australia, fucking Australia.
Is Australia screwing it up for us?
It probably is, because there's a lot of crossover species that occur in Australia and
Guys,
also
man.
in Papua. So
Yeah.
there's carpet pythons in both places. There's water pythons in both places. There's scrub, like all that. Well, scrubs are a different species, but there's a lot of crossover like that.
Like the
And
carpets.
So, a lot of times it does get listed and lumped, in that type of thing. But all pythons are CITES protected. All of them. There's not one python that's non-CITES.
Because
Oh,
it's
okay.
lawmakers that
Okay.
don't know what the heck they're doing, make it just jumbling everything up. Like,
Yeah, I guess. And there's local protection laws as well, and there's quotas. There's quotas in place, and there's all kinds of stuff. At one point, I was asked to take over a farm, and I was like, man, as cool as that sounds, I don't want to deal with all of the stuff that
Seems
you
like a
have to
headache.
go through to get shipments out. They keep adding like more and more and more stuff. It's like a miracle that a shipment even goes out at all. Like there's customs approval. Within 48 hours of your shipment, you have to get customs approval. This has
In 48 hours.
Yeah, this is just for
Jeez.
customs. This doesn't even have to do with anything like animal related. So you have to like upload your invoice, and then and then of course it comes down to money and all that stuff. And when you do your application, like that shipment has to leave within 48 hours of you getting the approval. So it's like, my gosh, how do you do that? Because what if the flight is delayed and it doesn't lift off and like an extra 8 hours or whatever? And it's like, my gosh. And that's just one element of a shipment. You have to have your CITES and your veterinary health inspections, and just all these things. And some of the airlines are like super picky, where they actually scrutinize all your paperwork just like a fish and wildlife officer would do, where they look through your invoice, they look through and they have to like approve all of your documentation. Korean Airlines does that
because they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, they have no idea
Exactly.
what they're looking at, but they could definitely find a problem in it. And it's like, my gosh, it's crazy. It's a miracle that any of these shipments leave at all. It's incredible.
So I would like to touch on importation of certain localities. And I'll start it off saying that I'm not necessarily, I'm not going to request that you go into why we don't see these localities anymore. However, what is the likelihood that we could see some of the localities that are highly sought after, that have come into the country before, such as something, the mountain type animals,
Right, like
Waminas,
Lamina types, or even like Marukes.
Arfak, and even Kofi Al. I had a place that I deal with. They do have a private breeder that does that let 2 into the country last year, but they were $5,000 a piece. What is the likelihood that we will see those types of localities become a little bit more common? Because we are starting to see an influx of Maniquari neonates that are, well, no, I'm talking ones that are a little bit sought after, that we're starting to see. We're getting yellow Maniquaris in, which are the same thing as Sorongs. They're probably Sorongs that they're just labeling Maniquari because it's financially a little bit more attractive and they move a little bit quicker. What do you think it's going to take, or is it possible to get Waminas again, possibly Arfak Mountain region animals, because of and if you want, tie into what you had told me about the local markets have some really good stuff.
Yeah. So I can't get into any specifics, but I can just basically kind of wrap up the answer with the possibility of all of that stuff coming back around is really good. And
I
it has
tried to softball it so bad. I love you for the conversations we've had, but I tried to softball it so hard.
Yeah, and it has a lot to do with me now being retired and me being over there. I'm working on something, and it I think it's going to be pretty interesting. In fact, this last trip, I met with somebody, and we had some discussion about something that was totally unexpected as well. So um, I'm working on some stuff, but there are some amazing animals over there, and I think
Is
not
there
many
is
not
there
many
anything we haven't seen yet?
exporters.
I'm sorry. Is there anything we haven't seen yet? Are there any localities that are coming out that we
Yeah, oh yeah,
haven't
for
seen?
sure there are, because
Chuck,
people over there are not like, I'm a freak, right? I'm a crazy person when it comes to all this stuff. So I found a scrub python last year. I can't remember, is when I went to Maluku, but I found a scrub
that
python
was last year.
locality that's crazy. And I haven't put any photos out because I don't need all the social media experts to be passing my photos around and ruining the whole thing. But like little small isolated locality of something that is crazy looking awesome. And so like I'm working on that. But
Can I guess? Is it dark? Just because it's from the Maluku region.
no, there's actually two, and one is like a honey and one is a gray, like a silver
Okay.
gray. And
Okay.
it's two different localities, which with both of them totally different than anything else that's
Okay. Because I just gotta geek out for a second. Everything that I see over in the Maluku region is like, compared to where you see the same species elsewhere, they're typically just, because of all the volcanic activity, they're just, you see them dark, that they've just evolved into that darker type of phenotypic
yeah,
expression.
kind of, but in like the southern Maluku region, you have, for scrub pythons at least, there's like a whole horizontal. It's kind of canted a little bit, but there's like, you can start drawing, like connecting the dots where like xanthic animals are appearing
Mhm.
within like this whole range, and it's really interesting. I don't know why, but that's scrub pythons. But when you get, and these are the things that happen when you get somebody like me that has like a lifelong, knowledge and experience about all these different things, and then for somebody else, like I probably shouldn't say it this way. Let's say the
I love the
owner of
censorship.
whatever company in Miami flies over to Maluku and goes to like look at some reptiles. Probably that person is not going to be able to identify something that's different, like, well, a scrub python or something that's a bit more obscure. Of course, if they're seeing thousands of blue tongue skinks every year because that's their bread and butter, and then yeah, okay, so maybe if you see a blue tongue skink that's a little bit different, then maybe you'll pick up on that, or maybe not, because for them it's basically everything is a dollar sign, But for me, like when I go over there and I see something, I'm like, wow, holy crap, like I have like
Like, what do I want to keep?
And if
yeah,
you're
yeah, and
saying,
I'm like,
wow, that means it's something
that does
special.
not fit the description. Like that just doesn't fit. That's something new. That's something different. And so I carry that with me everywhere I go, whether I'm in the jungle, whether I'm in an animal market, a food market, wherever I am, I'm like, it's like a machine, and I'm scanning and I'm like processing everything that I see. Then all of a sudden I'll just stop dead in my tracks and go, wait a second, that one's off. There's something different about that one. And so those are the things that it kind of plagues me in a way, because it's always on, like that part of my brain is always on and working. And so as I see stuff, like I can like scan it fast and come up with something. So all those localities that you're talking about and all those things, um, if somebody like me is poking around and looking at stuff and whatever, there's for sure there's stuff that's not in the hobby.
I have a question, and depending on how you answer it, Depends on whether or not my wife gets lucky tonight. Does any of this
I like
stuff,
the way that was phrased.
does any of this stuff involve heavy blue dorsals?
Well, that's actually a very common trait. Like, for example,
Yes, I
like
want it thick, real thick. Talk dirty to me, Dan. Tell me.
I mean, that's a very common trait, actually. Blue dorsals and all that stuff, especially like Sarong and all those areas that I just came from.
My favorite. That's what I'm focusing on, by the way, with my breeding.
Yeah,
podcast.
he's got his whole goal is just to make us thick and widespread out, just like lime green snakes with that crazy electric blue dorsal.
Amazon basin looking type.
Right.
Oh, yeah. For me, I'm more interested in like the really, really dark Wamenas are really really nice to me. I saw some oxabil animals, which I don't think that locality is in the hobby at all. It looked like a
Brian Fisher's the only one in the States that has one.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Yeah. The ones that I saw were they look like a full stripe Merauke, like a full white
see
stripe
that
Merauke.
that's what I'm.
But the background
They are
color,
gigantic animals.
was like the background color or the base color was like a very, very light green or almost bluish. Like that's the body color, and then it has like a full white stripe like a Merauke.
Dude, I want to try to
right,
get.
Dan? They're huge.
The couple that I saw were big. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wanting to get as close to like Aussie chondros with just that nice symmetric, just white dorsal pixelated pattern on the top of that dorsal, and if we can spread it out even more, but that's even better. But I like that green color you're talking about. That's like that mint that has that blue undertone to it.
So hold on, I'm sorry, oxabil, isn't that a PNG locality?
No, oxabil is just on the Indonesia side, but it's at the border.
Okay, it's very close to PNG.
It's on the border. Yeah, it's in that red zone area that nobody should really be going.
Just the rumors or the real deal?
Oh, if you Google like oxabil or bintang with the additional word of like red zone, you'll get a number of articles about military like lighting people on fire and dropping bombs on towns. And
did you just do a YouTube video on this?
No, I put a little bit in the Discord actually.
Oh, okay, that's where it was from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy stuff. But I don't know. I Chuck, just for selfish reasons, I feel like we shouldn't be talking about any of the other new stuff that could be coming in.
Oh, well, so this kind of ties into a question. Dan, I'm sorry. I cut you off. Ties into my question. Your favorite locality, oxabil or Wamena? You were it seemed like you kind of liked both.
I do. I had a couple really, really, really badass Wamenas back in the day, like probably 2004. Well, that's 20 years ago. My gosh. But like they were amazing. Just super, super dark with bright yellow dorsal diamonds. They're really, really striking to me. I really like them. But I like anything that isn't around or that's new or whatever. That I'm always.
That's me right there.
Yeah, anything like that is.
That's how you suckered me in with some of the Pattaya stuff.
I'll tell you what, man, red Tamikas get me all excited,
dude. That I got a Tamika Aru cross that I just posted a picture of it the other day, or yesterday, and you cannot. I can't get a picture of that, but that like. There, you could see the blue around the yellow diamonds, but what you can't see in any of the photos is that there is like this blue powder dust that's just sprinkled all over the red, because it's maybe it's coming up on a year old, probably a year old now, so it still has this brick reddish color, getting blues around the yellow diamonds, but the entire red, it's like if someone just took like blue dust and threw it on, like you can see so much blue there that the camera just does not pick up, and it's driving me crazy. But yeah, Tamikas are something I love to see. So my, for me, chondros is definitely just like with the retics. I'm going to be pushing the locality stuff. So Dan, we're going to get to know each other really well, even more so now. But when I go the designer route, what I'm really heavily focusing on is that permanent yellow diamond along the dorsal. I want that to stay throughout its life. Like I don't care if it's just a green snake, if it's a blue snake, if it has melanism and black in it, but any color, when you just have that contrast of bright yellow diamonds and it's that way as an adult,
Yeah.
That's my stuff right there.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. And then something else I think you touched on maybe before we went live or whatever, but the locality stuff, right? So like that's a whole different topic. We have like experts that have never been over there, and all of their knowledge is based on a couple of importers bringing in animals, and their localities are based off of one of two things: what their suppliers told them these things were, or they're making it up as they go to generate sales and be able to charge more for their animals if they just put a different locality on stuff. Both of those things are happening and have happened in the past. So you've got like all these experts that will, like, they'll argue up and down that snake is not this, it's that. And it's like, but what are you learned everything that you know from these people flipping these animals in Florida or whatever. So it's mostly right, because I've set out to try to kind of like either disprove it or give credibility to it or whatever. So like scrub pythons, for example, anything that has like kind of a washed out back pattern for a barneck or whatever automatically gets labeled as Kofiau. But then I went to Kofiau and I saw a scrub python there, and it did have that pattern, but I found something very similar in Sarong, and I 100% would guarantee you that if that animal from Sarong ended up in the U.S., somebody would label it a Kofiau.
The same crap with the super dwarf retics, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's not. I mean, it's a lot of things. It goes like that a lot, and there's a number of sellers that, like, I would bet money that they like just cover their eyes and throw a dart at a map and go, okay, what's this one? And then they just come up with a name. And
Brazilian chondros.
Yeah. There's all kinds of weird stuff that I see, and I don't really get involved in it, and I don't want to waste my time like having any arguments with anybody. I just let people do whatever. If they ask me, I'll tell them, but other than that, I don't like assert myself. But it's mostly right, the locality stuff, most of it, but not all of it. And I think the not all of it part, like, people will, like, they'll fight to the death, but based on what? Based on this nitwit in Florida that got the animal from this guy, that got the animal from that guy, who never asked the supplier, and it's like, man, I don't know. So like Chuck, your question about the locality stuff, are there things we haven't seen before? There's probably a lot, because, like, if an animal comes in and it has like a white stripe down its back, Merauke, boom,
yeah,
it's a Merauke. Is it? I don't know, because I just saw some white stripe animals from Oxabil like 2 weeks ago. So
it's the same thing with people confusing the poultry type Manaquari sarong animals that have a heavy white on them. They're like, oh, that's an Aru.
Right.
You look past the white. That is not an Aru.
No, look at the head.
That is well, yes, the head, but I'm just saying, just the dorsal pattern itself in that blue, that is not an Aru type animal. That's just my opinion. There's a lot of the highest white stuff, it really is like Manaquari stuff. You get extreme examples, it could be better than an Aru. I mean, but better than me. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, but what I'm saying is, and I'm not calling you out on it, but your information is based on everything that I just described. It's
Correct.
based on well, underground and strictly and Bushmaster and this and that and whatever. And it's like, I don't know. It's like I said, it's mostly right, but is it? I don't know. Right. And I've never been to Aru, not yet. It's on my list, but it could be that I get to Aru or get to some place and go, wow, the hobby is completely wrong. Those animals are like, that is not what these
Not a single white speckle on a damaroo.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know, right? I mean, you never know.
I really want you to figure out why some of those Arus come in groups every now and then with the little red dots on the white scales. They're just so freaking cool looking. Before, yeah. They're neat looking animals.
Yeah.
That's sketchy.
I don't know if it's UV exposure or if it's like because the Aru Island chain,
or it's a red Neo, not from Aru.
It's quite a few islands. The Aru Island chain, correct? Everything is coming from that region, Aru. There's multiple islands those animals are on, correct?
It could be. You have to also think like how far are people going to go? Like one example, Num4, right? I didn't even realize this until I went to Biak. The Regency is Biak Num4, but there's also a little tiny island off the southern coast of Biak that's Num4 Island, but it's really small, like really small. So it's like, okay, so is the Num4 thing that somebody just kind of looked at a map and said, okay, well, we have these Biaks, but I also see the word Num4 next to the word Biak, so let me just call them Num4 for selling purposes.
For rarity, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I have no idea.
Is it Pedido? Pedido, I think, is
Pedido,
another.
Yeah.
Is right near Biak, and they call it Pedido to sell.
Yeah. Well, one of my suppliers actually this morning sent me a photo and said, this one is Pedido. Is it special or whatever? And it had some white speckles on it or whatever, but that's also kind of a common trait among a lot of Biaks. They have white speckling. So I'm also like providing a little bit of education based on what I've seen and all that kind of stuff. But I'm
also the nerd that also likes to know, like, yeah, sure, it's from the Biak region, but if it's from this tiny little island that's off of the main island of Biak, like if I could have that information, that would be lovely. Like,
oh, for sure.
Like I'm in the same boat as you are. Like in my mind, I'm wishing, man, I wish I could just do this myself. Now I just don't have the time and the initiative to be able to do that venture. I'm happy someone like you did get to do that. But yeah, like I'm all about the, shit. I know it's not likely, but man, I mean, if I could get GPS coordinates, phenomenal. Like,
yeah, totally. I'm not going to put anybody on blast, but before I took this trip, a pretty well-known chondro guy, he said, "Hey, so you're going to Biak?" He goes, "Whatever happened to Supplier? Biak is the city, right? And then Supplier is the island." And then I was kind of like, I don't think so, but I'm sure I'll find out. And then, so they separated it for like government area purposes. So Supplier is now its own regency, and it got separated from Biak Num4. And I guess I think a long time ago, Supplier was the name of the island and Biak was the city. But now, and a lot of hobbyists don't keep up with those changes. So those names is very convoluted now, because you have like, I've seen Supplier locality, getting tossed around, but it's like, yeah, but is it the old Supplier or the new Supplier? Because when we were on Biak and we were traveling around, at some point, it was told to me that, yeah, we just crossed into Supplier, we're driving or whatever. So, oh, wow, that's cool. And so, there is Biak City, but then it's its own regency now, and then Numfor got pulled into it. So those changes are ongoing in like all across. Like they don't really have provinces; they have regencies, and so different regencies will fight to either become their own, which usually they want to be their own regency, or they'll want to be like pulled in with this regency instead of that regency, maybe for economic reasons or whatever. Like Aru belongs to Maluku. Like who would have thought? Aru is kind of more like off the coast of Papua,
Had no clue.
West Papua, but it belongs to Maluku.
Interesting.
And so like, and maybe it'll change, and maybe at some point it'll get pulled back, for like government purposes or whatever. It'll get absorbed by a different regency. So even those changes can affect the locality names as we understand them. So it can be very, very, very confusing. But like that being said, I mean, I don't have enough years left on this earth to be able to like explore and figure out all the localities and all that kind of stuff. It would take like a few lifetimes to be able to do that. But I don't know anybody that's been to Biak. Who's gone to Biak? That's far. Even like when I told one of my suppliers I'm going to Biak, and he was like, "My gosh, no!" Like he said that none of my friends or anybody that I know has ever been there before. And it's true. Like the whole time that we were there for more than 2 weeks, and I didn't see one other foreigner the whole time that I was there. I took ferries and boats and everything else, and I was it. The only foreigner I saw was when I looked in the mirror, if there was a mirror, and that was it. So it's far. It's really far off the beaten path. The other question that I get, which is no way it's on your list of questions, but how do they feel about Americans because of all the World War II history there, right? I asked because I wanted to know. I'm going to all these like battleground sites and looking at all these like artifacts and all this war stuff, and I was like, my gosh, do they hate Americans or what? Because like we were here like dropping bombs and killing Japanese and all this other stuff, and they were like, they love Americans there, but they don't like Japanese there because of the World War II history.
Communism.
Japan pushed in, and America is seen more as the savior, the one that came in and pushed them back out again. So
interesting.
But I don't know. I'm just going to this like far out remote place, and I have friends, and they organize our travels and all that. And I wanted to go to Wamena the last like couple of years, and they keep saying it's not a good time to go to Wamena. So I don't. So I just don't go there. Okay, well, let's go somewhere else.
Is it like because of economy, because of war, or is it because of the time of the year that you're trying to go?
It could be anything. It could be for a while there, it was post-COVID with the economy. Sometimes it's the elections that are coming around. Sometimes the Indonesian military will like execute somebody or a local or whatever it is.
Dude, it can't be as bad as Mexico. 37 official, dude.
Yeah,
Can't be bad as Mexico right now.
Yeah. But of course, like you don't want to put yourself in a
right
like that. So I rely on my local people to sort of tell me, what about this, what about that, and so like okay, so locality, that brings up another thing. I was talking business with somebody, and her husband is from Osmat. Now that's a locality that I never heard anybody talking about, any green trees or anything from. That the regency of Osmat is, I believe it's to the west of Tamika, I think. I looked at it on a map, but I can't remember. But it was kind of interesting to me because I never heard of not even one animal coming from a locality called Osmat. But this girl's husband is from that region. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And they were saying like, it would be a really interesting thing because we have a link to go into that area. So I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. That's cool. So I don't know, like that, and it's a big area also.
It looks to be southwest of Jayapura.
Okay, yeah, right.
Yeah, it's to the left. It's on the other side of the border of Papua New Guinea, and
Of course.
it's about southwest of Jayapura.
Yeah,
Probably I don't know, like probably I guess if it was even possible, car ride, probably about like an hour and a half away from the Arafura Sea.
yeah, yeah.
To back up your argument also, Dan, I really do think that even in a 2 square mile region of just a quote unquote locality area, I guarantee you have 2 to 3 very different phenotypes
Oh,
just in
100%.
that area,
Well,
because
I mean,
there's naturalistic line breeding. Those snakes maybe aren't traveling that far, and you're getting sib to sib, mom to son, whatever. And
Yeah,
I think Beox, you got Beox have a tremendous amount of yellow on them, a tremendous amount of white on them, very blue faces, some red neonates that have
some with the black outline dorsals,
black outline dorsals, powdered
right.
blue half moons going down the back. I think that there's a lot of line breeding in the wild.
And to further the argument, and I always hate that, my experiences with retics and bringing this up, but I can't stand the people that are that tell me, and they're like, they'll ask me, hey, does this look like a Kalatoa? Does this look like a Honey Island or Madu? Does it look like a Karampa? And or they'll argue that it looks like one, and it's like, dude, I've seen Kalatoas busier than Karumpas. I've seen Madus busier than the other two. I've seen clean, like there are so many different phenotypic expressions on a particular island or locality that you can't just visually look and have if anyone can tell you that they can look at a locality or an island and guarantee you that it's from that island, then the moment that someone will argue that they can 100% do that is the moment that it's no longer worth communicating or talking about this with you, because clearly, there's no discussion to be had.
I'm gonna stretch this leg real quick, and I'm gonna go use the restroom. I just gotta stretch my knee out real quick.
Yeah. But I'm curious as well. I mean, did you have any comments on that, Dan?
No. I totally agree with you. I've seen it firsthand in the field as well. There's a lot of variation, but of course not on everything. Like like a white lip python or something. They're all the same. But
right, Epidaura, same thing.
Like that. Yeah, stuff like that. No, there's a lot of variation. And the other thing that really bothers people is when you say, like, for the people that are super opinionated and will like really assert themselves and argue really heavily about that stuff. And I always like to say, pull out your passport. Let me see how many Indonesia entry stamps you have in it.
Right.
And then they're like, oh.
Right.
Because I don't know, with me, like, even from a very young age, I was like, for me being able to, like, let me put this out there. I don't go to these places for YouTube purposes. Like, YouTube does absolutely nothing for me. I'm losing money just by
the equipment,
investing in the cameras and all that. Like, I'm not a big YouTuber or whatever.
I can relate.
But I don't do any of this for YouTube. Like, YouTubers do stuff for YouTube. I do this stuff because these are all things that I want to do myself, and I just happen to be sharing the things that I choose to share. So, it's like, for me, it's always been, if I really want to consider myself an expert in something, I need to go see it in the wild. Like, that's just me. That's just my little thing that I set for myself. And I kind of feel like let me just at least go, let me see them in the wild. And then that brings the whole thing full circle. Mm-hmm. If I've kept it, if it's a species that I've bred and a species that I've seen in the wild, like, it's at that point, if I can tick those boxes, then I really feel accomplished. Like, I really went the distance with that species. of course, I get a lot of younger people. Oh, it must be nice. We all can't just drop everything we're doing and travel. And it's like, well, yeah, of course not. But I'm older than you. I paid my dues. I retired.
Right.
I did the work. I did all that stuff. And this is what I'm choosing to do now. If you want to try to do what I did, nobody's stopping you from doing it,
Right.
But and then of course I hear stuff like that from people. It's really annoying to me. But again, I'm just doing all of this because it's what I want to do. It's what I enjoy doing. I love it. And like green tree pythons, I bred them for the first time like about 30 years ago or whatever. I bred them again like 4 or 5 years ago before I sold my collection and moved the other stuff to overseas. And like seeing them in the wild was a really big deal to me, And so now I feel like, okay, now like I got that picture of me holding one in the middle of the jungle or whatever, and not from this last trip from last month. Like I did that already a few years ago, but it's still amazing to me every time I'm able to do it, especially in a new
I bet.
area. So, but these are just things that I do,
No, I mean, that's a goal of mine too. And, I'm not at that point in my life, but, a lot of people tend to tie in the breeding aspect with financial gains, and a lot of people can target breeders as selfish or it's driven by monetary gain. And anybody who's been doing it even for a handful of years like I knows that there's the money is not where it's from. But when I get into new species that I've been doing more recently, I do get pairs. I want to breed them. And then, people ask me like, well, why do you have to breed everything? And it's a very simple answer. It's understanding. How can I feel like how can I say that I understand the species if I don't understand their reproductive cycle, how to get them to reproduce, to observe the behavior changes that happen during reproduction? I'm missing an entire evolutionary process that has led them to survive that I won't gain unless I do that. Now, the ultimate goal is to go out and to see these species in the wild, which I do have dreams, aspirations that I'll make reality. I'm only 31. I'm nowhere close yet. But it'll happen. I'll reach a place where I can retire and I can travel a lot more. Like right now, all of my traveling is with my wife. My wife is a bougie spender. She likes to go to the big places, the big names. We're going to Switzerland and Italy and next month, right? Like, so we're knocking all the nice, beautiful landscape places. And, when I'm a little older, I'll start going on trips by myself to Indonesia and start seeing these species out there. But yeah, breeding for me is always been about further understanding and has never been about like monetary gain. I don't ever get a species because I think I can make a bunch of money with them.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, I see it all the time too on social media where people they'll poo-poo the idea and they're very opinionated about it, where they'll say, if you're breeding those animals for money, you're in this for the wrong reasons. And then somebody else will chime in and say, you can't make money breeding reptiles. And then it's like,
oh, you can.
All those people, it's like they're all bitter because they're doing it wrong. They did it wrong, or they chose the wrong species, or whatever it is. I see it all the time, and it's like,
yeah,
no, you can make money at it. I mean, if you want to or not or whatever, you work with something you like, work with something that you don't like, but you can breed it and make money from it or whatever. It's all.
No, I mean, I just sold a clutch of 24 Soleils in 5 weeks, and the average price of an animal was $1,750. Nice. I profited a lot of money from that, but that's also because I didn't spend $750,000 getting a huge warehouse and having a massive overhead. Like, I have a full-time job. This is something I'm doing for, so yeah, it can be profitable and it's lucrative, but it's definitely not the fire, right? But like, yeah, you can, if you are smart with it, you can make good money selling reptiles and breeding reptiles. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. And you can be very passionate about everything and do that at the same time as well.
Right. That's like, my daytime job is, I'm a therapist. I do counseling therapy. I primarily work with PTSD and eating disorders. And that's to say that's a passion of mine that I love doing. I love supporting others and helping them through the darkest times of their life. But that's to say, like, what, I can't make a living off of that. And if I do, I'm therefore not doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
It's the same thing as being an officer, right? You guys serve to protect, and you guys did what you do, and you love doing it, but no one's gonna do that shit for free.
No, of course not.
Right.
Of course I didn't love doing it. I had reptiles on my mind. I was going to Southeast Asia. I just want that stupid.
They changed rules because of you.
That's it, man.
My thing is, I'll tell you what, the most successful people in this hobby, and I've learned this, is the people that are passionate about it. If you love it first, the success financially will come.
Yeah, it comes
as a side effect. I'm sending an animal out tomorrow to somebody, and he's completely aware of, that he can get a fresh import for much cheaper than what he paid for my animal. But with my animal, I have been nonstop 24/7 replying to every single text, question, and he's getting a wealth of knowledge. The hours upon days upon weeks upon months of research that I have compiled in my brain is readily available to him. And that, as a responsible breeder, someone who's supplying animals to people, if you do it the right way and you treat your customers correctly and you make sure that that animal is going to be cared for correctly, and that person will have the most successful experience with that animal from their investment, not a purchase. Because when you talk about green tree pythons, my personal opinion is when you're buying it from someone, it is an investment. You buy it from me, you're buying the guidance, the quality of the animal. If you buy it from Dan, you are buying an import that is to the T. It is top notch. You're getting new blood, but you are getting an animal that was, imported. Dan, you test for, nidovirus, you clean your animals out. You don't send out sick animals.
Treats for mites.
That is the reason why you have been so successful and why your name is so big and why you are the number one person in this country who imports animals to the country, and why so many people are so successful and have reproduced with so many of your animals. This is not a parasite-ridden animal that was basically, Bill Stiegel says it the best. It's dead. You just don't know it's dead yet when you get it from somebody who's a fly-by-night flipper. And Dan, that's not you.
That's the difference.
You have given importers a good name. Yeah. You are one of the good ones. I'm not going to say one of the few because there are some that I like. However, what you're doing is completely different than what everyone else is doing. You truly are supplying quality animals at a very reasonable price that are clean, they're healthy, and they're handpicked. You're there in person from your friends that you've made overseas. Yeah. You've built the most unbelievable business, and you did it from passion. And a side effect is the fact that you get to do this in retirement and you're living the dream.
So you want to know what's crazy too, Dan? And I just to add on what Chuck was saying, and then at the beginning of this episode, you talked about how people will put you into a box of an importer, right? Even though you've been breeding and you do all this stuff, and almost being put into a box as an importer has this bad stigma to it. But when you do things the way that you do them, I see being an importer as the top. Like I see it as being at the top of the list of what there is to be in this herpetoculture industry, because you're not doing it to flip, you're doing it to keep the bread and butter and to also sell bread and butter quality animals, and you're providing with healthy animals, and just to echo everything Chuck said. So yeah, I found it interesting that your comment was people put you into this box, and that box has this negative stigma. But to me, a successful and a reputable importer is at the very top of the top of the reptile industry.
Well, there's another side effect that comes for the people that, like what Chuck was saying. There's another side effect. It doesn't show itself in everybody, but it shows itself in most people, where they lose the passion for the animals, and then the animals just become just money. Everything is about money, and then it turns into like this game of flipping animals like as fast as you can for money. And so I never got that. Like, I never became that. The passion is still with me, like probably stronger now than it's ever been. But I just happen to be importing, but I have the passion still. And I think that's where a lot of importers have gone wrong. They've lost the passion for the animals, and now it's just straight business. It's animals, animals in, animals out, money in, and then that's it. And then the cutting corners and all that other stuff. And then that's where the word importer gets dragged into the mud because of those people, and I don't know who those people may be, I have all my personal opinions on who they are, but maybe they do have passion, or maybe they have money problems, or maybe, I don't know. I have no idea, but they've certainly done a lot of things to deserve like their poor reputation, and I think it all kind of just boils down to, I love all this stuff, and if I ever lose the passion for it, I'm out, because I really don't need the money either. I worked all my life. I'm good. So I'm doing this for fun. And it's just all passion for me. So, but that's a common thing that happens. You see it, it, you see it, we all know it, we all see it. And it's just, it is what it is. But
yeah, I mean, some people that see it, they can stop in their tracks early, and they can make changes to make sure it doesn't hit a bad or dark road. And others just kind of continue blindly and don't take a moment to kind of reflect. And, it's unfortunate that happens. But Dan, man, it's been an absolute pleasure of the last 2 hours. I kind of want to open the floor, if you don't mind. Can you, do you mind sharing where people can follow? I know that you have a YouTube channel and other places, but in case anybody wants to get plugged into seeing your stuff on social media.
Everything is DM Exotics. Instagram is DM_exotics, and then YouTube is DM Exotics. We have a second channel, DM Explore, but I haven't been uploading a lot to it lately. I'm thinking about, as I do the videos from this recent trip, I might put more of the travel stuff on that channel and spare my reptile viewers, having to sit through a lot of scuba diving and stuff.
I enjoy it, but I'll make sure to follow that other channel too. I like the episodes too where you have food and stuff on there.
Yeah,
that stuff is awesome. But and
a website too. We have a website, obviously dmexotics.com, and we update it pretty well. I try to keep it funcking. I know
the available page is broken for those of you that are.
The available page right now is a little bit stale because we have a waiting list right now of over 200 names for all the stuff that's listed on the available page. But I don't want to get into updating it because we have 3 shipments that are in various stages. I think we have one arriving on the 19th, one on the 20th, and one on the 24th. And all that information was just given to me today. So once I have animals in hand, and then I can work through waiting lists and all that, then I'll update that page.
That seems like the nightmare right there.
Yeah. So everybody just check the available page in December after I've already picked my animals.
Oh man!
Actually, you know what? I'll make this announcement here. So this season in our breeding facility in Malaysia, we hit on almost everything, lots of really cool colubrids, no green tree pythons, mostly colubrids, boiga and beauty rat snakes, some rare stuff, things that have also never been bred before that are nowhere to be found in the hobby, aside from us. And so those eggs are still being laid even now this month. And so we're here now this month. So none of those animals are going to be able to ship, plus they'll be too young and not ready. So we've decided that we need to be back here in December, and we'll do the January Reptile Super Show. And then so in December, we'll be able to bring our offspring here that we produced, like now. And so the animals will be like 4 or 5 months old. And I think that's going to be the newest routine for us, is where we'll come back in June for the June and July Reptile Super Show. And then we try to make an escape, go back over there, do some work. And then we'll come back in December for the January Super Show. And then we'll go back and put in more work over there. So I think that's going to probably be the routine, only because we're learning from our facility that the season is probably going to be happening a little bit too late to make that summer run. So we may as well just come back and do like a winter one as well.
Yeah.
So, and green trees, probably, if there's still demand and people are still into it, probably do like a second round of those also in December and that kind of thing. But that's all.
Edit this part out.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the stuff that I got coming in from you, and what's to come. But yeah, Dan, we're gonna, you can hang out in the back room for a bit. We're gonna send you to the back, and we're gonna wrap up and close up. But it was honestly an honor to be able to sit down, talk to you for 2 hours, pick your brain about all these things that we've had in the back of our minds, and your willingness to let us kind of share it with the community out there.
Yeah, no problem. And the reason I haven't done any podcasts is because nobody's asked me.
No shit. Oh, yeah, sorry. That's
I'm
nuts.
Like, I don't know, man. I feel like I'm kind of, in a way, being a little bit shunned in a way, or either that, or people just think that I'm like big, like too big to do podcasts anymore or something. I really have no idea, but it is what it is, and I just rock on with all my stuff. So
well, like I mentioned before, when I joined your Patreon, man, and I joined that first Zoom call almost a year ago, I was like, is this really Dan? Like, is he this down to earth? And you haven't skipped a note. You haven't changed a bit. So I don't know. Hopefully that's a freaking open invite for people to have you on and talk more, because we need to see this side of the industry, the import side, from someone who does it the right way, because it's a wealth of knowledge for us to know and to get into, because I don't think people have to only have bad experiences with getting imports. I don't think that has to be the standard. So we appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
I got one more question for Dan.
Yeah.
And you got to make this one a clip. Yes or no? Are imports, like everybody says, are they dead? Are they dead? Are no more good imports coming in, or does DM Exotics have something going on in the background?
Oh, dude, I have so much stuff going on in the background. You have no idea.
Cut the show. That's it. We're done. He's got nothing available.
I have new species that are not in the hobby. I thought I was going to run out like a couple years ago, and I'm nonstop. I'm nonstop with brand new species in the hobby that I'll be bringing.
New locality chondros, man. It's a good way to end the episode.
Let's talk about that backstage. Don't tell anybody that.
Yeah, Dan, I do got a question for you backstage, so we'll talk in a bit. But thanks again, man.
No worries. Yep.
I kicked the wrong person out.
You kicked me out.
Oh,
dude, that was a good one. My knee's on fire.
Dude, I know. I want to wrap this up. Thanks for hanging tight for over 2 hours now. I think our longest episode yet. But yeah, if you guys are not subscribed, remember that this is part of the Reptile Lounge Network. If you're hearing about us for the first time because you were maybe YouTubing DM Exotics, go follow his pages, but also give us subscribe to the channel. The Chondro Lounge comes out every other Monday. The Retake Lounge is out every Friday, and we are looking for people that are like-minded, wanting to educate on other species as well. So if you guys have a podcast idea and you want to submit it our way, you can go ahead and email us at the Reptile Lounge Network at gmail.com or at the Retake Lounge at gmail.com. We'll make sure to get through that. And so if you want to join the Reptile Lounge Network and come lounge with us with your own podcast that you've had an idea burning. You have access to almost 1,500 subscribers. I know, not a lot, but it's better than zero. But yeah, appreciate all of you for tuning in. Chuck, you got anything else?
Oh, I don't think we had this in the last episode. I had a green tree python ovulate, so
Hell yeah. Oh, dude, that's right. The one that you had no clue what she was doing.
Yeah, that had ultrasounded.
Right. Yeah, you went to that measure. See, that's what chondros do to you. They stress you the hell out. All right, guys. We'll catch you guys in a couple weeks on episode 5.
Y'all take care. Have a good evening.